if you want to like truly build a real business, you have to have a system to run your business on. And what I've found is none of these freaking coaches teach you how to actually run a business, because that shit's not sexy. Like that doesn't sell. If I put a message out there that's like a get rich quick message, an easy button message, I'm going to attract that type of person. See, what's sexy is like hit button, get lead, make money. Like that's what's sexy. So that's what all the coaches talk about. None of them actually teach you how to structure a business. It's actually really freaking sad to me. And so many people go to these events and then they just see somebody on stage and went up there and claimed like, I do this and I sell these homes and these homes. And the truth came out, the guy didn't sell shit and it was all fake. But what happens is like you go to these events, you see people on stage, they make these claims that they're doing this or that. People come back and then they blow all their money on these different, lead sources, systems, whatever. And they go freaking bankrupt, and they never actually got taught how to build a true business. And so I wish that all of these coaches would teach people the foundation of building a business first, right? And actually having a foundation before you go vertical and build the house on top of it.
You're listening to the number one real estate podcast in the world, where we talk with real estate agents and professionals all across North America about their wins, losses, lessons, and stories, help you win in your local market today. My name is Cody from Sheridan Street. I'm joined with Vikram Deol of the Real Estate Sales Academy. Vikram, for those that can't see you, or they might,
you're missing out. You're missing out.
Yeah, you're missing out. You're missing massively out. Where are you right now?
Look at that cool. Look at that cool building right there. Did you see that?
Yeah. If you're listening to iTunes or Spotify, you'll have to go to YouTube to see that Vikram is in an Uber right now in some random city recording this podcast. Obviously, new country. Obviously, he no longer has an admin because he booked over top of a podcast. So I think you need to get a new admin.
Well, technically, I didn't book on top of the podcast.
Okay.
But it's the transportation that's taking a little bit longer. Okay. So we landed in plenty of time.
Okay.
But the transportation is what it is. Hey. We're on Latin American time right now, bro.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
You're in Panama.
I'm in Panama. I almost extended my stay accidentally in the country with illegally. So I had to leave this morning. I had to leave today. And then I get to come back tomorrow with the new stamp so I can finish my visa process.
Yeah, you're actually moving to Colombia, eh? Like that's the plan? Like you want to stay in Colombia long term?
Oh, like 9 months. So the end of the year, we'll figure it out.
That's long enough.
If I get a wife by that time, we'll have to see what happens. You never know.
Yeah, you probably already have a wife, but that's neither here or there. I'm actually back in Colombia as well. I'm back in Bogota, Colombia this time. So in the city, in the heart of the city, it's really big. It's very different than Medellin, but it's beautiful. I'm in this. I found this like snag of a spot here in Bogota. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It used to be like an art studio. It used to be an art studio that converted to Airbnb. It's like massive. There's like 3 stories. Like it's crazy. Like
if you want to start working on your OnlyFans, Cody, this is the spot. Like you have the white walls. Like you can just put your little feet out there. Put your pink toe out there. I bet you get good money. You probably get at least 50 cents a toe.
50 cents a toe. Wow. That's a great deal. But Vic, we have a very, very special guest today. Very special. Why don't you intro who we have on the pod with us today?
Yeah, I got a long-term friend. So I was like, dude, whatever we're going to do, like, I'm not missing this podcast. Like whatever we do, we're just not missing it. And so, long-term friend, met him back in the Tom Ferry days. I think we met 2012, 13, kind of the same time I met Sharon and a lot of the people that, a lot of the cool people like Raquel. And so Kyle's a beast. Like Kyle's the dude that just, when I met him, he's like, yo, let's go get a beer. And I'm like, all right, I can jive with this guy. Like flip flops, chill. And then you see him on stage like half an hour later, like 3 beers in with the beer on stage. And I'm like, who did I just interact? Like, who are you, bro? Like, what's going on? So Kyle runs a huge team, 100-member plus team in San Diego. I think you are if you're not the biggest, you're one of the biggest EXP sponsors out there. You're running a bunch of investments right now, raising money all over the place. But I'm super excited because Kyle's one of the people that if you tell him to do something, like he will figure out how to get it done. And I've always wondered, like, how do you accomplish so much? Like, how are you, like, are you an entrepreneur? Are you an integrator? Are you the visionary? Are you like the unicorn that's a little bit of all of them? We'll get into that all later. But Kyle, welcome to the RE Agent podcast. Super pumped to have you. I know you got a sick baby.
He is the unicorn.
Got a little unicorn.
I don't know. My daughter's toy is here with a unicorn horn on it, so it just seems fitting.
That seems very good.
It kind of seems fitting. So, dude, give us like a 30-second high-level overview of a little bit about how you got to where you're at right now, being like huge sponsor, investor, developer, flipper, all these things. And then I know Cody's got some questions because I'm going to go check into the hotel.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, appreciate it, man. I see some things have not changed with you. It's cool. Cody, you're a saint. Yeah, I got into real estate, something I never thought I'd get into my entire life. I hated real estate growing up. My dad was in real estate, and he was like that dad that real estate consumed his life. And, you know, it led to days where he wouldn't be there when he was supposed to be there to pick me up, or wouldn't be at my games or any of that stuff. So I hated real estate, never thought I'd get into real estate. But in the early 2000s, I was 20, and my dad just kept telling me, you need to buy something, you need to buy something. I was like, Dad, I make, you know, 5 something an hour scooping popcorn at a movie theater. I can't buy something. And he was basically like, here's a mirror. If you can fog it, they'll give you a loan. So they did. They gave me a loan for $500,000 when I worked at a movie theater. Bought a house, flipped it, and made $17,000 in 3 months. And I was like, all right, Dad, let's talk about this real estate thing. I worked with him on the commercial side for like 5 or 6 years. And then I just got sick of working with my dad, wanted to do my own thing, wanted some independence. So I left, started my own brokerage, ran my own brokerage for 12 years. I got sick of running my own brokerage, the headaches, the liability, the lawsuits, the threats, the depositions, all the crap. Decided it wasn't worth it to be the broker anymore. I tried to sell it, realized it was worthless. And so then I decided to join a brokerage for the first time in my career. Joined EXP a little over 5 years ago. At that time, I had a team of 24 agents. My team is now 100 plus agents locally here in San Diego. And then we've grown our EXP group that we call Fast Forward to over 10,000 people across the world at this point. I think we're in 6 or 7 countries, all 50 states. So we've grown something really massive there. Along the way, I've been flipping properties. I own a ton of rentals. I've been buying into syndicated apartment buildings, mobile home parks. Now I'm working for a fund, raising money for storage units all across the country. And then I'm also buying some properties locally that we're going to develop and start building some mid-rise apartment buildings. So doing a little bit of everything.
I would say that's a little bit of everything. And a lot of, you know, real estate agents out there might be thinking, okay, Kyle, like you're doing a lot of things. Back to Vikram's question, like, do you think that you are an integrator, an entrepreneur? Like, why do all these things? And why, like, what, I guess, initially drove you to decide to build a big real estate business? Was this something you had set out to do, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or is this something that kind of came through happenstance?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely somebody, there's like 2 things that make me who I am. One, I started playing sports when I was like 4 years old. I played soccer, was my first sport. I played every sport under the sun since then. But even from like my first year playing soccer, I had to be the best. Like it was an obsession. It's a literal obsession. Like I don't know anything else. I don't know how to do anything without striving to be the best and hopefully end up being the best. So since day one, like my first year playing soccer, I literally played goalie. I didn't allow a single goal the entire season. Like that was my first exposure to sports, was like, I'm playing soccer and I don't allow a goal the whole season. And like, I think that maybe set the tone for like my life, because like, that's how I lived my whole life. Like I don't let anything get by me. I literally will not settle for anything less than being the best, or at least giving my best wherever that ends up landing me. Simultaneously, I qualify for Mensa. My IQ is like ridiculously off the charts, which is good and bad. I've literally never read a book my entire life. I can't read. I try to read one book. It gives me a headache. I can't comprehend it. Like there's negatives with high IQ. Also, I use my high IQ for bad for a long time in my life. I did a lot of bad stuff. I've been arrested. I've gone to jail. I've been charged. At one point in my life, I got charged with 3 felonies. that carried 5 years apiece for a 15-year potential sentence. Like, I've been through a lot. I used my brain for a lot of negative things for a long time. When you stand in front of a judge and the judge tells you that you could be going to jail for 15 years, like that was my scared straight moment, as they say, that really kind of like churned things around for me. And once I hit that point, like then it's just, I shifted my brain. I realized like everything I worked for my whole life could be stripped away with one stupid decision. And so I refocused my life in the right direction and doing things, being the best at. I was stealing credit cards, I was breaking into cars and doing fraud, like a bunch of dumb stuff. And then I just kind of shifted my brain to like going in the right direction and just building like the most badass business that I possibly could. And so all those things from like sports growing up and the way that my brain works, now just channel that into the right direction to building, I think we've been number one in San Diego 7 of the last 8 years. Hopefully we'll be number one again this year. And just, EXP, or one of the biggest groups in all of EXP. Like, that's just all I know is like to be the best, just put everything on the table, strive to be the best. And a lot of times that lands right where you want to be.
Can we talk really quickly about culture? Because it's not really easy. Like you say, like you want to be the best. And I'm curious to know, it's like you have that mentality in your head where it's like, I'm going to be the best from a very young age. And obviously you mentioned like there was a lot of things that took you to kind of like be the best. Like you mentioned, like be the best, like ethically, but like with your team, like, this can happen in real estate. Like, how do you find other people and how do you cultivate a culture of people who want to be the best? Like, what do you look for when you're hiring those teams? Cause like you said in the last 5 years, correct me if I'm wrong, you went from 20 agents to now over 100 agents, and you're doing a lot with EXP, over 10,000 agents. You're really at the end of the day, like a coach and a mentor to a ton of agents from across the world. Like, how do you find talent in this space, and how do you encourage them to be the best? Do you think that's a nurture thing? Like, can you walk us through kind of your mentality around that?
Yeah, for sure. And this is a funny thing to note, and I'll answer the question, but like, I actually am a horrible coach of one-on-one. I'm horrible at it, because what happens is I meet with somebody and I get really excited. They're like, hey, I want to start door knocking this neighborhood. And I'm like, awesome, this is cool. What neighborhood do we want to knock? What's the demographics of the area? Okay, who's the competition? What's the piece? We design the piece. We talk about how many doors they're going to knock. What's the piece look like? What's the call to action? Where does it take them? How do we track it? We build this whole campaign. And then it's like, all right, the goal this week's to knock 100 doors. And then I meet with them a week later and it's like, all right, how did it go? And like, I didn't get it done. It's like, okay, well, what did you get done? Nothing. Like, I literally am incapable of continuing the conversation. Like, I'm completely shut down. It's over. Like, I can't. So I've learned over my career that like my superpower is in a one-to-many kind of coaching format, as opposed to a one-to-one coaching format. And I'm really strong there because I get a high. I could go speak in front of 1,000 people. If I can just get 10, if I can impact 10 people out of like that 1,000-person room, like that fills my cup. And I just get to hear the 10 like success stories. That makes me very happy. I don't have to hear the 990 people who did nothing. So I've just learned that about myself. Like, that's my superpower. That's where I'm the most comfortable, and that's what fills my cup. So I try to put myself in that position as often as possible, whether it be here on a podcast with you guys, it's going to, impact a lot of people, or I'm on a stage, or whatever the case may be. I put that out there, and I put my hustle out there. And I think, like, I've been posting my daily routine on Instagram lately. And I get messages every day, like, how the hell do you do that much in one day? And I'm like, the crazy part is not only do I do all of that in one day, but I'm home by 6 o'clock and I'm home with my family. And people are blown away. Oh, and by the way, I typically don't work Fridays. And by putting that hustle out there, like putting out there how hard I work and how disciplined I am and how I strive to be the best, I think it naturally attracts that same type of person. If I put a message out there that's like a get rich quick message, an easy button message, I'm going to attract that type of person. If I can put a message out there that's a tough love kind of message, and yeah, you actually have to work. There is no easy button. You gotta, and you gotta be very disciplined and all that. Like, if I put that message out there, I find that attracts the right type of people into my ecosystem.
So in your ecosystem, like in your 100 agents, do you have somebody that's an integrator then for those 100 agents? And at what point in your business did you realize, as you were growing, that you needed to bring in an integrator? Like, how many agents was it where you said like, hey, I'm not great at one-to-one coaching, Can you walk us through kind of the transgression of like the growth? Like, so people that might have an aspiration to build a 10, 20, 50, 100 person team, they can kind of like learn from your mistakes or learn from your experiences. Like, can you walk us through that?
For sure. And yeah, we run on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is where the visionary integrator thing. I mean, I started that way too late. Like, I wish I would have started that way, 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 way earlier. I started that 3 years ago. And I mean, I've been in this, got licensed in '05. So, ran like 15 years without it.
If you could go back in time, right? If you could talk to your younger self, when would you have brought in like EOS professionally? Did you have it installed by one of their coaches, or did you just do it yourself? So you had it installed.
Somebody, yeah,
right.
Yep. I would say probably
when
an
would you
organization
have
of like
gone back
five.
and did it?
At five people. I would have started early, and some people might say like, wow, that's really early to do that. But unless you want to stay at five, like if you just want to have a 5-person company, maybe you don't. But if you have a desire to build a larger company, I would say by the time you get to 5, you've got to start separating out your roles and responsibilities. And, the majority of people out there are going to either have a visionary or an integrator brain. Most of us tend to be more on that visionary side, and we all fall victim, right? We talk about Tom Ferry, like, Tom has a million ideas, right? Like, you go to one of his conferences, and by the time you're done, I mean, it's like 4 days, you walk away with like a freaking entire notebook full of ideas. And then a lot of us come back from that conference, and then we just puke all over our team. We're like, oh my gosh, guys, I was at this conference. We're going to do this and this and this and this and this. And we just like completely destroy our team because we didn't think through anything about what makes sense to integrate. And then we didn't think about like what we integrate. How does it integrate? How does it affect this and that? And we just blow our teams up, which is why you have so many teams that blow up, right? They're like Oprah's waistline. Like, they get huge and then they get skinny, and they get huge and they get skinny. Like, I watch teams do this shit all the time. It's because of that.
Let me ask you a question, dude. That's hilarious. Oprah's waistline. And I agree with you. Like, the definition of roles, it's really hard. Like, I see a lot of teams, you see a lot of teams, Cody talks to a lot of people, and they lack so many, they have a lot of support, but the support's not in the right area. What does something like EOS do for you, right? For those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically a way to run your business. So like, why would somebody want to spend, because it's an expensive installation. And if you're a 5-team member and you're trying to think about like, okay, do I hire coaches? Do I hire marketing? Do I, bring somebody in to help me like with my social media? There's a lot of choices when you don't have a lot of money. So why would you have gone back and started it then and invested the time, the money, the energy? And like, what do you think it would have done for your growth now? Because people look at you now 10 years later and like, dude, who cares? Like, it took you an extra year. You're at 100 agents, you're 300, 400, 500 transactions a year, 10,000 agents in EXP. But obviously we don't start like that.
For sure. I mean, if you want to build a true business, you have to build a true business. I think most real estate teams aren't even a freaking business. Like, the amount of real estate teams I talk to that don't even have a P&L, or if they have a P&L, they don't even know how to read their P&L. Like, I would argue you don't have a business if you don't have a P&L. If you want to like truly build a real business, you have to have a system to run your business on. And what I've found is none of these freaking coaches, Tom, Mike, Buffini, Chuck, like none of them teach you how to actually run a business. Like, none of them do, because that shit's not sexy. Like, that doesn't sell. You don't fill an arena with teaching people how to build a business. Like, it's not sexy. What's sexy is like hit button, get lead, make money. Like, that's what's sexy. So that's what all the coaches talk about. None of them actually teach you how to structure a business. It's actually really freaking sad to me. And so many people go to these events and then they start throwing, like, they just see somebody on stage and, oh, well, that guy's amazing. I mean, there's a particular person I think you and I might remember that was on stage in San Diego that went up there and claimed, like, I do this and I sell these homes and these homes. And the truth came out, the guy didn't sell shit. And it was all fake. But what happens is, like, you go to these events, you see people on stage, they make these claims that they're doing this or that. People come back and then they blow all their money on these different, lead sources, systems, whatever, and they go freaking bankrupt. And they never actually got taught how to build a true business. And so I wish that all of these coaches would teach people the foundation of building a business first, right? And actually having a foundation before you go vertical and build the house on top of it.
So I love the direction we're taking this podcast because we've never been down this way before, but this has actually been something that we've been really focused on with Sharon. And I was actually at an event 2 weeks ago with Sharon and with a guy who runs a really profitable auto repair business called ShopFix. And we were talking about P&Ls, and a lot of people, they don't, like a lot of agents don't even know what a profit and loss statement is. So can you maybe walk us through, because I think that every agent, whether you're like, you should be running a profit and loss statement. So when you're running a real estate team, what are some things that you're looking at when you're looking at your P&L? And what are some things that you're considering that will allow you to scale or build or grow profitably in your business, in your market? And what should teams be looking at in regards to expenses, in regards to bottom line profit?
Cool. Yeah, I love that we're going here because it's not talked about enough. Now, this is something that I think is really important. Anytime you're talking about P&Ls, it's very important to make sure you understand that you're oftentimes comparing apples to oranges because everybody runs their P&L a little bit differently. The reason I say that is I've talked to people whose P&L starts at how many dollars go in the bank account. Other people's P&L starts at how many dollars what was the total GCI, right, that was generated before splits, referral fees. Other people start after splits and referral fees. Like that's a huge distinction, right? Like where are we even starting this P&L at? Then there's people who are still in production and have themselves on no split. So every deal they do is 100% to the company dollar, where other people have themselves on the same split that their agents are on, which is how it should be, because your agent split, your agent activities are a totally different business than your actual team. Those are two different businesses. You as the agent and you as the team leader, two different businesses. You should be on a split. Then there's people who don't have themselves on a salary, or they have themselves on a salary, but they don't tell people. And then they add the salary back into the P&L, right? Like, so you got to understand when you're talking about P&Ls, like, let's make sure that we're on the same page, because as soon as somebody's like, yeah, my net margin is this or that, I'm like, all right, but how did we get to that? Like, what do you consider your net margin? Because I want to make sure that we're talking apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So I think that's one. I just want to make sure to put that out there. People get, oh, well, so-and-so on stage said they run at this margin. Like, okay, but how did they get there? So for me, I just like to look at total revenue, top line, right? How much money did we generate? Then I like to look at what was our cost of goods sold, which is where we take our splits and our referral fees. That's typically our cost of goods sold.
So just so I'm clear, are you putting your agents under cost of goods sold or under
Yes.
Fixed expenses?
We put them under cost of goods sold. And again, that's a distinction. People do that differently. And not that one's right or that one's wrong. Everybody's different. For us, we take top line revenue, which is GCI plus any other fees that we collected. Then we take cost of goods sold, which is basically splits and referral fees. And then that gives us company dollar, or what's more commonly referred to as gross profit. And then you can take percentage there. We can look at what is that gross profit in relation to total revenue, and that gives you gross margin. So those are a few of the numbers, right? I'm looking at total revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, gross margin. Then I'm going to take expenses off. In a perfect world, a buddy of mine, Andy, runs a company called Simple Numbers. Like if you're watching this, I have no affiliation with him. I like what he's doing though. If you need a P&L, like talk to him. And he breaks it down into 3 buckets typically. One is marketing, which should be around 10% of your total revenue, 10% for staff and salaries, and then 10% on overhead, basically everything else. Mm-hmm. In a perfect world, you have total revenue. Cost of goods sold is around 50%. In a very healthy business, 50% cost of goods sold, 10% to each of those 3 things, it leaves you with a 20% margin. That's a super healthy business. So you take 50%, take away 10, 10, 10, you leave with 20% left over. Now that's your net margin. And whatever those dollars are is your net profit. So I look at total revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, gross margin, those 3 categories, net profit, net margin. Those are like the numbers that I like to see. Obviously, there's a whole lot of other little things in between there, but those are what I like to look at. Are many teams at 20% right now? Hell no. Most of the teams are at 0 or negative. Because where most people screw up is their cost of goods sold is way too high. Between the referral fees we're paying out to a lot of these vendors, and then a lot of team leaders are weak and feel that they have to give their agents too much money or the agents are going to leave them. So they give agents way too high of splits. And then it's like, if you're supposed to have 10, 10, 10 for those 3 numbers at the bottom, If you're not retaining 40%, right? If your gross margin's not at least 40% and you're giving away 10, 10, 10, like it's pretty much impossible to be profitable.
Yeah.
Even if you only retain 30%, you're literally break even at that point. So a lot of people give too much money away to their agents and or their vendors, their referral partners. They have no money left over to pay the bills.
Splits are an interesting conversation that I think ties so perfectly into the profit and loss statement, because a lot of people are like, oh, we're okay taking, a hit on a 30% referral fee or a 35% referral fee, when in all actuality it could bleed out their business, especially at scale. So I'm curious to know, like, when you're talking about agent to agent referrals, or maybe we're talking about, your split with your agents, like what advice would you have to a team lead that wants to attract top talent while not hemorrhaging their profit and loss statement, where they're doing like a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split, still able to provide value, but still able to add bottom line profit to their P&L?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is know your worth and know that you don't need every agent. Like here in San Diego County, there's 30,000 agents. Where most of us get screwed up is that we think we need every agent. Like we get desperate because we just need, oh my God, I can't lose this agent. I have to keep this agent. Like you have to be willing to let people go. I mean, I literally hosted my huddle with my team this morning and I encouraged people to resign from the company. But like, please, if you're not in alignment with this, please send me a resignation as soon as this is done. Like I would rather push people away than try to pull them in. And I think that if we build, and this is where Chet Black, I like John Chet Black's coaching, which is like KFR, keep fucking recruiting. Like if you recruit enough people, you're not concerned about holding on to any one person. I'm not worried about, if Vic's my top agent, I'm not going to do anything in my power and literally like compromise my comp plan, compromise my core values. I'm not going to compromise stuff to keep somebody who's not a fit. I'm happy to let him go, because I know I've got 10 more people. Like, I mean, I think this month there were 20 people in my office at our last meeting that want to join the team. Like that have already gone through like our first round of interviews. We'll typically bring 8 to 10 a month into the team. So even of the people who've gone through like that first level of interviews, more than half of those are going to get cut, because I have these funnels. I'm consistently bringing people in. I'm consistently attracting people into the company, where if I lose an agent, I had 2 agents leave this week that were good agents. And I'm like, hey, I wish them the best. I'm not going to cry one bit for any one person, because I know I got 10 new ones coming in next month. And
I think what you're saying right here, Kyle, is really important. And I think it gets glossed over, is that when you left production, right, your job shifted to, okay, now I'm running the team, I'm responsible for X, Y, and Z. But what you're responsible for as a team leader is to make sure you always have a pipeline. The same way that your agents need a pipeline, you need a pipeline. And if you're going to be out there, and I remember going to like a Ben Kenny event or something, it was a Keller Williams event back in the day, and they were really big on teams and recruiting and having a bench and having a pipeline. Because if you're a team leader, and I know you guys have coached people like this, we've coached people like this. If you're a team leader and you have people on your team that don't belong, but you don't have anybody else on your bench and you're a team leader, one of the challenges is that your ego gets involved. And it's not like starting at zero. It's starting at zero when people looked at you as a big team or as a team leader, and now you have nobody, your ego gets involved. So you keep people around. Like, do you think that plays a role in why people hang on to talent that they know they should let go of?
Yeah. And dude, think about this. Think about your entire career. Have you ever once regretted cutting somebody out of your company? Like if I think about all the people that have come and gone through my company, like I don't know anybody who ever regrets firing somebody, cutting ties, whatever term you want to use. But I know a million people who've regretted keeping somebody too long. Like if you feel you need to cut somebody, you need to freaking cut them. Do not hold on to them. Like will do so much more damage holding on to them, because they become toxic and they infect the entire team. And then they convince other people that their way is the right way and your way is the wrong way. And now when you do cut them, they take people with them. Where if you would have cut them out sooner, I hate talking about it. I lost my mom to cancer, but it literally is like cancer. Like if you don't cut the cancer out quickly, the cancer spreads. Like that's literally what happens in your body, and that's what happens in your freaking team. It's no different. You have to cut the cancer out as quick as possible.
Here's a question for you. How do you know if you're just a shitty team leader who like can't attract talent, and from somebody that's just not a good leader. Because I think this happens a lot as well. Like me and Sharon have had tons of conversations. Me and Vic have tons of conversations where it's like there's a lot of agents that are high performing agents or high producing agents that genuinely should have support staff, but they should never have a team, just based on the fact that they just don't know how to lead people. And when you get it, like, how do you recommend that shift happens? Like, you work with agents from all across the world, tens of thousands of agents. You probably had this conversation with people that you're like, you speak with them, you're like, you shouldn't have a team. Like, how does one identify whether they should build a team or whether they should potentially just have support staff and be a single performing agent?
Yeah, well, there's different ways to do it. Like my buddy Tim Smith up in Orange County, he runs a team, but he's just the number one producer on it. Like, he doesn't actually lead it. He's not the one sitting down. Like, he identified it. He tried to like be the guy doing the meetings and all that, and realized, like, you know what? I'm a lead from the front guy, not a lead from the back guy. And so he just goes out there and he'll sell, $500 million by himself this year. And that's how he leads his team, is like, let me just go break the walls down for you and show you what's possible, and then just follow behind me. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, that's one way to lead a team. And then he's just surrounded himself with the right people that handle all the operations and all of the other things. Like, he still is the visionary of the team, but he's very removed from integrating his vision into the company. So you don't have to be the person who's like the one that's hosting the meeting, that's having the difficult conversations. Like, Tim stays so far away from that, where some people are much better at that. So I think that a lot of people feel the pressure to build a team and to be like the guy, the girl at the front of it, like telling people what to do, when to do it. And that's not some people's strength. Some people are far better. Like, just get out in the field and go sell, and let your team handle everything else for you. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way to run a team. There's just a right way for you, and you got to figure out what that is. But it's not a one size fits all approach, in my opinion. Because some people try to be Tim. Like, I have no desire to be Tim. Like, the last thing I want to do is be in the car all day, running around to appointments, having to sit down, in living rooms all the time, and go to the charity events and the auctions and the networking and the parties. Like, I have no desire to do any of that. But like, he loves that and he thrives, and he gets a high off of that. Where me, like, let me be behind the curtain and moving the levers, right? And in the computer and looking at the systems and the data. Like, I enjoy that stuff. So I think you got to find in your organization, which is what EOS helps you do, is figure out like, where are your strengths, and you want to play to your strengths, and you want to punt to your weaknesses.
I'm really curious when it comes to, you said like, you're pulling the triggers behind the scenes, and it's kind of sounds like you're almost like an integrator in your team, like, positioning people, almost putting them like the coach, putting them on certain areas, like, you're in charge of this, or, I'm going to trust you as like, I'm going to be the assistant coach here, and you're going to be the coach, I'm the owner. Like, positioning people is so important. Now, you mentioned, we were talking off air about you having a specific strategy, because like, obviously, I think you mentioned you guys have done close to 300 transactions so far this year, and we're halfway through the year. So you're trending to do probably 600 transactions in the San Diego market this year, which is pretty crazy. But you had mentioned that you have a strategy around how to take one listing and turn it into 5 transactions. Can you walk us through like your methodology and kind of your ethos around when you get a listing or you get in front of a buyer, what you're doing or what your team is doing in order to maximize that specific person in front of you?
Yeah. So I think, there's obviously super low inventory nationwide right now. I mean, worldwide, whatever. Inventory is so low. A lot of people right now, they get that listing and they get so freaking excited that they got that listing. Like, yeah, I finally have it. This is what we all want. And then they just don't understand the opportunity that they have with that one listing. Like, there's so much that you can do with that listing that so many people really shit the bed in this, in my opinion. So we look at, every time I get one listing, I'm trying to aim to get 5 transactions out of it. And so number one is I got to sell the listing. I don't get paid to take a listing. I get paid to sell a listing. So in a perfect world, I not only take the listing gets sold, and I get my listing side commission. So that's number one. Number two, I got to double end it. I got to bring the buyer to the table. And in a low inventory market, it's way easier to double end a deal in a low inventory market than it ever is before, right? Buyers have gone and they've offered multiple times before. They've gotten beaten out. They start to realize, like, maybe I should just try using the listing agent. Maybe that'll help. So our, ratio of double ending deals is way higher in a market like today than it was 6 months ago. So you got to double end it. Number 3 is I need to get a referral from my client, right? I'm going to do such an amazing job for that client that I'm going to get them to refer somebody to me. A lot of people, they get the listing, and I've actually found, because I like all the deals I've ever done over the last 10 years have been listings. Like you don't get a lot of FaceTime when you're on listings. And I'm in California, so like literally a third of my clients are leaving the state. I don't get as much FaceTime with the clients. So I got to find ways to get FaceTime with them. Like on the buy side, there's a lot of FaceTime. You're meeting them, you're showing them homes, you're doing inspections, you're turning over the keys when it's closed. Like I had a client, the deal closed this week. The client moved 2 weeks ago. They're already in Colorado. Like, it's hard to make that into a celebration. So what can you do with your sellers to really make it an amazing experience to where they want to refer you? So referral is number 3. Number 4 is wherever my client is going. So like this client left to go to Colorado, like I got to get that deal. I got to get, whether they're staying locally, I got to get whatever it is that they're buying, or if they're going out of the area, I got to get a referral on that. And I think people miss that, especially in markets like, California, New York, where everybody's leaving. Their clients like, oh yeah, we're moving to Florida. Oh, cool. And then they just like continue the conversation. Like, no, where are you going in Florida? What are you looking for? Oh, I actually have an amazing partner. And I mean, that's the beauty of EXP in our groups. We have people literally in the entire country. Oh, hey, you know what? I want you to talk with Damon down in Fort Lauderdale. He's amazing and he'll take great care of you. And now at least whether I get a buy side locally or I get a referral fee out of area, I got to get that. And then the last one is I got to get the next listing in the neighborhood. I got to get the next listing. I got to do such an amazing job on that one listing. And I got to make sure everybody in the neighborhood knows how amazing I am, that they need to hire me. And so this one that I just closed, I don't do many deals. This is my one that I've done all year. But I sold it for $275,000 over the list price. And the list price was freaking high. Like I didn't think I'd get this high, but I did. Now I got to leverage this one. I got to make sure everybody in the neighborhood knows I did such an amazing job. I'm going to utilize the review from the client because they're going to talk about how good of a job I did. Then the numbers are going to show how good of a job I did. And I'm going to use that to attract my next seller in the neighborhood. And then I'm going to rinse and repeat and do that same thing all over again.
I got a question for you, Kyle. There's a lot of negative stigma around double ending. And I was a big fan of double ending. And, I believe you do the work, you find the seller, blah, blah, blah. That's my rationale. Not that I need one, but a lot of people do need a rationale behind double ending, or if it's proper for legalities and whatnot, right? Obviously check your state. I think double ending is the way to go. And I think you actually have a lot more control over the transaction. You have a lot more control over buyers and sellers. And in a market like we're in right now, having control over the buyer and sellers, super important. I just had a client, he lost 4 deals while he's on vacation. It's like, damn, bro, that's painful. He's like, it's cool. I got 6 in escrow, but still sucks to lose, 75% of your biz. How are you double ending deals in this market? Like, how are you training? And I know we got to wrap up, but how are you training your agents? Because if they can get a listing and they can double end it, like that would boost their business a lot. That boosts their bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, the number one way so you want to know, how are they attracting the buyer?
Yeah. How are you guys?
Or how are they navigating? Yeah. So here's my big thing. I like,
let's not worry about the navigation. They got a broker for that.
Okay. So you got to make sure everybody in the neighborhood knows the home is for sale. You got to blow it up and bring as many buyers to the table as possible. So here's what I teach my agents to do. Every time you get a new listing, I want you to go around the neighborhood as soon as you get the listing. And I want you to tell everybody, hey, my name is Kyle. You probably saw my sign go up around the corner. We have a new listing. It's coming soon over there. I wanted to find out, who do you know who's looking to move into the neighborhood? I'm going to everybody in the neighborhood because everybody in the neighborhood knows somebody who wants to move in the neighborhood. So I go to them when it's coming soon, and then they'll say, oh, I can't think of anybody. Okay, great. Have you ever had any thoughts of making a move? If you did make a move, where would you go? What would take you there? When would you like to be there? Right? Like I'm going to have that conversation. So I go when it's coming soon. Then I'm going to go a second time when I'm getting ready to do my open house. And I'm going to say, hey, remember that house I told you is coming soon? Well, we're going to have a party at the house this Friday night. We're going to have, wine and cheese. It's going to be a really fun event. Love for you to come by. Great. Also, have you thought of anybody who'd be a good fit for that home? Bring them by. Oh, no. Have you had any thoughts of selling again? Like I'm going to go through it. So I'm hitting them a second time for the open house. Then the house goes pending. I'm knocking the door for a third time. Ideally, you're calling alongside this. Some people will knock, some people will call, some people will do both. Hopefully you do both. So you're going for a third time. Hey, remember that property I told you about that was coming soon and we were doing a big open house over the weekend? Well, crazy. We had 75 people come through the open house over the weekend, and we ended up getting 7 offers on the property, and we ended up taking an offer that's way above full price. So, the thing is, now 6 people missed out on this property. I just want to check in. I know you said before you weren't thinking about moving, but there's 6 people who missed this property. Is there anybody who comes to mind who, might be looking to move in the neighborhood? So I'm hitting them again when it goes pending. Then I'm hitting them again when it goes sold. Hey, remember that property I told you about was coming soon? We did the open house. It went pending. Well, now it's closed, and I can tell you the good news. We ended up selling it for $275,000 over the list price, and then I'm trying to get a listing out of that again. So I'm hitting it 4 times, coming soon, open house, pending, sold. And then all those things are also helping to attract buyers to the table. When we do list the property, we only allow people to come in during open houses the first weekend. We don't allow any private showings. So I force everybody to come in at one time. And the funny thing on this property that we're using as a case study here is I had 7 offers on the property, all in the 1.9 to 1.95 range. This buyer came to the open house the first day, saw all the people come through, came back the next day with his family, saw all the people come through, and offered $275,000 over list when he didn't have to go anywhere near that high over the list price. But it was because he saw all the craziness of all the people in there. So it really paid off. But we just want to get everybody into that open house. The open house right now, that's everything. I mean, that is your biggest opportunity to bring buyers to the table. And I'm always amazed how many people come to an open house like, oh yeah, working with an agent. It's like, oh, are they on their way? No. Yeah. They just, sent me on my own. Like, oh, is that what they normally do? Well, yeah, they tell me just go find something and then let them know. And I'm like, oh, that's a little different. On our team, here's what we do. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. We hear that often, but I think the big thing, is you have a strategic process towards what you're doing, which I absolutely love. So anyone listening back to this podcast, rewind this one, rewind it, because there's so many practical things from P&L to, like that. Like Kyle just gave you a strategic process for an open house. Write it down. That's the whole reason we do this podcast. Kyle, if you're wrapping up here, if somebody were to want to reach out to you, maybe they want to learn more about EXP, maybe they want to learn more about, maybe it's an agent-to-agent referral in the San Diego market. Maybe they want to, chat with you about what you're doing, or maybe it's about they want to join the fund. Like, where is the best place that they can reach you to have a conversation about one of those topics?
For sure. So if you want to follow me, you can go to thewhisselway.com. We have a podcast and YouTube channel on there. You can join my referral network for all the people leaving San Diego. You can subscribe to our email newsletter or get in our private Facebook group. We also have a whole video content creation course. So all that's at thewhisselway.com. But if you want to actually truly connect, follow me on Insta at Kyle Whissel. I keep it simple. And then you can learn more about the fund that we're raising for, building storage all around the country. And then you can also just follow. I'm posting what I do on a daily basis, my entire schedule. And that's been really eye-opening for people to see, like, how does Kyle work 30 hours a week, but do all of these things? When people see how many things I pack into an 8-hour day, they're like, oh shit, that's what it takes to get to that level. And so it's been really eye-opening for a lot of people. So follow me at Kyle Whissel on Insta.
Kyle, bottom of my heart, really do appreciate you taking the time to chat with our community and just providing so much value around things that aren't often talked about, profit and loss statements, the key step-by-step process and how you actually do an effective open house. But really do appreciate you. And I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the RE Agent Podcast. We'll see you soon.